A combination of things have made Cheney the vulnerable part of this thing right now. Let's go after Cheney. Let's see why. You know, Bush, you know, he would have been a wonderful actor for a Depends commercial. Right? And I think he soiled himself on 9/11, quite frankly. He, of course, is a puppet. The modern presidency is based on the fact that the president and the vice president are puppets. They respond to the imperatives given to them by their handlers, and those generally come from Wall Street, London, think tanks, and places like this. You've got a kind of administration of hooligans at the top. This shows Bush's strange idea of presidential decorum, I would say. Or the architect open contempt for, I guess, all of us. I don't know. There's one where his daughter is sticking her tongue out at the press, but I didn't find that one. Now, more important, I would say, is our dear friend Cheney, although still a puppet. No, but right now the vulnerability is right here. Let's see why. Libby has been convicted. This is a leading neocon, right? This guy is worth 10 robes. He is a hardcore doctrinaire Straussian neocon, a disciple of Wolfowitz. He's worth 10 robes. You think anybody important in this system dabbles in elections? Elections to get Bush elected? This guy, his mission is war. He starts world wars. That's his specialty. He is a Class A Nurenberg war criminal. He has contributed at the Pentagon and now in his current form to the deaths of about 1.5 million Iraqis, right? About 500 to 750,000 during the sanctions, and now 650,000 plus during the bombing and the warfare. I said before this verdict, if he is declared innocent, hold on to your hat because we're going to get World War III. If he's convicted on everything and gets 30 years, it means that anti-war forces are relatively strong. The verdict on Libby is a barometer of the anti-war sentiment inside the establishment forces, you know, in general. Cheney is on the ropes. Let's look at why. We have the Bagram bomb. I'll tell you what it is. He's got a deep vein thrombosis in his leg. He's got a possible clot embolism that could go to his lung or to his brain. We got Libby guilty on 4 or 5 counts. And we've got General Petraeus saying there's no military solution. And we're in an early phase. We're not in the last throes, but we're in an early phase of all this. Here is our dear friend Cheney gathering around his victims, his unwitting victims in many cases, these individuals whom it is our duty to somehow save from these policies. Now, he went to Pakistan. Why would he go to Pakistan? Well, Pakistan borders Iran, and therefore, if you want to attack Iran, you've got to set up some kind of arrangement with Pakistan, right? You're going to need bases, you're going to need flyover. You try to get them to join, they won't join. And then he went on to Afghanistan. Why Afghanistan? That also borders Iran, same story. So you want to attack Iran, you've got to visit Pakistan and Afghanistan. So Cheney is obviously on a trip last week to organize the attack on Iran. In the middle, he's at Bagram Air Force Base, Afghanistan, and the bomb goes off at the gate. And it kills a couple of GIs. This is a big deal. This is a very big deal. There are 2 possible explanations. Maybe you can think of more. One explanation that I see is the anti-war military faction had a bomb go off at the gate when Cheney was there to tell him, Cheney, stop. Stop it. We know what you're doing, and stop it. The other possibility is that the bomb was placed by the pro-war faction, and that there actually was, in this variant, there's an actual attempt to kill Cheney. The pro-war faction could have said, he's used up anyway, let's bump him off, and we'll use that as a pretext. We'll blame that on Iran, and attack Iran saying they blew up Cheney at the Air Force Base. Remember, any catastrophe in the Middle East, any big military defeat, will be blamed on Iran. Because the argument will be, oh, those local characters, they're too primitive, they couldn't do it, it must be Iran. Right? So anything that happens. So neither one of these explanations is very good for Cheney. Then we have the necessity of blood-thinning drugs for the deep vein thrombosis in the left leg. Now, Cheney's under attack. Old George McGovern trotted out to demand his resignation. The Newark Star-Ledger, it's the biggest newspaper in New Jersey, dump Cheney now. Get rid of the second banana. And the most interesting for me, this past Thursday, a couple days ago, Jim Hoagland, this is the foreign affairs writer of the Washington Post, is the vice president losing his influence or perhaps his mind? Now, as soon as you say somebody's losing their mind, 25th Amendment. 25th Amendment. If you get half the cabinet to vote that he's crazy, out he goes, he'll say, I'm not crazy, then you need 2/3 of both houses. And it could be done. The other idea in the article is Cheney could indeed resign to give Bush a vice president who's politically and physically healthy. And Cheney is not. And you can see there's a couple of covers of news magazines. I saw these going through these airports. There's cover stories on Cheney. Cheney is in trouble. Try to take a push at Cheney, and maybe you could get him out in the next couple of weeks. That would then lead to the collapse of the Bush administration. Now, a couple of factors in the background. There is a split in the U.S. ruling class. You have the James Baker normal imperialists against the Schultz neocon fascists. Let's look into this for a second, because it shows how bad the situation is. Now, George Shultz emerged at the end of the 1990s as the spokesman of the ruling banking financier oligarchy that generally dominates this country of ours here. He dominates this country of ours here. He operates from Stanford University, the Hoover Institution. He is the top figure of what we would call the neocon or fascist faction. How about this? The current governor of your state was essentially chosen by Schultz and Warren Buffett. This was practically a coronation. This is how you got Schwarzenegger, because Schultz chose him. And it's also, interestingly, how you got Bush, Cheney, Condoleezza, and Wolfowitz. They're there because Schultz chose them. But of course, these cooks have cooked a rather inedible stew, so now there's a counterfaction, and that's our dear friend James Baker III. This is now the leader of an alternative faction, a more moderate faction. I guess you could say, you could think of it as the difference between the bombers and the stranglers. They have a different approach. This guy, of course, is an imperialist. What the program is essentially, he says, U.S., Britain, Israel at war with the world forever. Kill, bomb, right? He says, no, you're too weak for that. Use stooges, use patsies, use proxies. If you want to attack Somalia, get Ethiopia to do it. You do a little bombing, you get them to do it. His approach, what he says about Iran, Syria, is he says, I'll peel off Syria for you. I can do it. I did it before. I did it in the first Gulf War. He did. He got Syria to send divisions to attack Iraq. So he says basically, let's build an Arab-Sunni coalition, probably Syria, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, and we'll have them fight a war against Iran, Hezbollah, and the Iraqi Shiites. So his idea is create a regional war, and you're on top of it. You're not in it. You're on top of it with a few bombers, and you can play it that way. This is much more traditional imperialism. This is basically the imperialism of the late British Empire. I could go into much detail. So here are the factions. Neocon fascists, we have Schultz, Warren Buffett, Rupert Murdoch, Fox News, Lord Conrad Black, the head of the Hollinger, unfortunately about to go on trial in Chicago, Tony Blair and Bush Cheney. Over here we have the Malthusian imperialists, James Baker, Robert Rubin, Citibank, Soros, Rohatyn, Prince Charles, Maurice Strong of the United Nations, we'll tell you about him later, Gordon Brown, Chancellor of the Exchequer of Great Britain. He's probably going to take the place of Blair now in a little while. Al Gore and the Democratic Party. That's your lineup. Those are your factions in my view. We can talk about some examples of this. But basically the Democratic Party goes with the Baker Group, and the neocons, the Limbaughs, the fascist parrots of the afternoon go with the Rupert Murdoch line, right? The Karl Rove talking points line. The other complicating factor is that we are now in the middle of a financial breakdown crisis. And this actually, we talked about some financial matters in Arizona. This is a great unwinding, and I can't go into detail, but you have something called the yen carry trade, that the Bank of Japan has functioned as a no-interest free money machine for the world, the liquidity pump of the world for the past 5 or 6 years, 0% interest. Well, now they're up to 0.5%. We have $500 trillion of derivatives in the world, and they're all about to blow. These, by the way, are not taxed. You put a 1% tax on those, you get $500 billion. You've solved everything, from my point of view. You got 10,000 hedge funds. They have 1.5 trillion of assets. They're all highly leveraged. It's a time bomb. You've also got the subprime mortgage crisis that is the immediate weak point of this entire thing. So, death agony of the US dollar, world monetary crisis, liquidity crisis, currency crisis, the great unwinding of all those yen carry trade. 5 minutes. I got another half hour.